And so welcome to the NGO Government Roundtable on embodied carbon. And I'll just lay out the objectives of the meeting and all of these meetings that we've been having over the last, I guess we started this series of meetings in, gosh, I think it was like September of 2019. So we're going on our third or fourth year now. And the objectives of the roundtable are, first of all, to share. It started out really just as NGOs, and over the last year or so, we've been joined by a number of governmental organizations as well. And the objectives of our call are, first of all, to share news and strategic plans, resources, and tools related to embodied carbon. Secondly, we want to report planning and future dates for conferences, webinars, and meetings hosted by each of our organizations. Thirdly, we want to inspire and facilitate an ongoing communication and conversation among key leaders related to embodied carbon. And finally, we want to really encourage convergence on shared embodied carbon terminology, data standards, benchmarks, and targets for embodied carbon reduction. And a typical format for these meetings, I know that there are a few people who have not been here before, is that we have a series of relatively short reports by a fairly sizable number of organizations about what they're doing, what they're up to, what you all are up to. And so thank you all for coming this morning, and I welcome you to this conversation. And I'd like to start out by asking Megan Kalsman from the CLF staff about a recent publication from the CLF that I think we'll all find really interesting. And it's been published now on the CLF website for I think about a month and a half, 2 months now. And it's called the Pacific Coast Collaborative Embodied Carbon Policy Case Studies, which is a mouthful of a name for a document. But I'll let Megan tell you what exactly is the Pacific Coast Collaborative and why these case studies are so vital and help to point in a direction for a lot of other policy related initiatives related to reducing embodied carbon. So Megan Kalsman, take it away.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. I'm Megan Kalsman, policy researcher here at the Carbon Leadership Forum. I'm here today to talk about the Pacific Coast Collaborative Embodied Carbon Policy Case Studies. I'm dropping the link in the chat right now. The PCC, or Pacific Coast Collaborative, is a coalition of regional governments on the West Coast. So California, Oregon, Washington, as well as BC in Canada, and major cities, San Francisco, LA, Oakland, Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver. And the CLF has been a technical resource in the past year, ever since this low carbon construction work group started back at COP26. So it was actually when it was announced in 2021. And what we're doing is strategizing a way to advance embodied carbon policy in the region. And I'll share my screen just to share a little bit about what this resource looks like. So this is the link that I just pasted in the chat. And just a few months ago, we published 10 case studies of policies that are already implemented by these Pacific Coast regions. I'll just share. Here's what the document looks like. You can click through to see, and we organized it through different policy categories. So planned actions is really climate action plans, planned executive orders that were announced by governments, government procurement, so not only by clean, but other clean public procurement policies, zoning and permitting, building codes and bylaws, as well as deconstruction and reuse. So that's how we categorize it. We have a few different case studies in each. Here is a policy map of all the different policies that have been introduced in the region. So that's a good resource to explore to find out more. And then we did some deeper dives into specific policies. So here you can see for planned actions, we looked at Oakland's 2030 Climate Action Plan, San Francisco, Portland, and the BC Mass Timber Action Plan as well. Yeah, so we've heard some good feedback so far. We've actually heard from a few regional hubs in the East Coast that they're interested in publishing a document like this and working on case studies in their region. So yeah, I just wanted to share this resource. We're super excited about it. And thank you so much for having me on the NGO Roundtable.
Great, thanks so much, Megan. And then we're also joined this morning by Brad Benke, also from one of our research engineers on the CLF staff. And I've asked him to come and tell us a little bit this morning about the whole building LCA benchmarking project that he and a couple of other CLF staffers are deeply engaged in right now. And so, Brad, take it away.
Thanks, Andrew. I think we've maybe shared this project broadly to the group at one or two long past NGO roundtable calls. So I'm going to focus a little bit today on where we're currently at, which is a lot of effort being put into kicking off our data collection for the study. Let's see here. Oops. Oh, all the things. Okay. And put a link in the chat to our project webpage. So I'm the project manager for this whole building LCA benchmark study we're working on. Like I said, I think we've given an update on what the project is, but I'll give a very quick one here as well. This is a multi-year study to develop robust whole building LCA benchmarks for buildings. And we have a really strong focus on data quality, standardization, and harmonization of both the data coming in and the results coming out. If you're familiar with the 2017 CLF benchmark study, what we're trying to do with this is collect a lot more granular types of data so that we can do more in-depth statistical analysis into things, materials, building systems, design parameters, and also run sensitivity and uncertainty analysis on all of the data. So we hope to publish building benchmarks, our methods, background research, and a lot more throughout this kind of 2-year project span, and hopefully use it to inform a potential sort of North American whole building LCA repository to push that idea forward for the industry. So there's a full project description as well as a full overview video on our webpage. And today, I'm really just going to give an update on where we're currently at, which is trying to kick off our data collection. And I think it's important to remember that on this study, we're working with actual design firms who are going to be sending actual LCA results. So as opposed to a lot of other benchmarking efforts where designers or organizations simply report a total embodied carbon figure, I want to walk you through the process of what design firms are doing, which is first that they're storing a lot of project data about the buildings that they're designing. Things like where the project is located, all of the different technical and functional requirements of the building. They're also creating a lot of 3D models, BIM models, particularly using Revit in North America, but other software as well. And then they're using those models to generate and conduct whole building lifecycle assessments, which produces reports or LCA results that have all of the material quantities that were in the building model, as well as the full LCA environmental impacts. So we're trying to collect from each participating design firm that wants to share data with us for this study. We're trying to have them sort of collect and organize their project information, upload it to a private folder that we'll host, and then the CLF side, we will process and clean and run quality assurance on the data set before it goes into our database for analysis. The goal is to collect at least 200 real-world whole building LCA projects, including all of their attributes, material inventories, environmental impacts. And like I mentioned before, we're really focusing on data quality over quantity, which also makes this project a little bit unique. And there's definitely a difference between a high-quality LCA versus a high-quality project. We're not necessarily asking for people to send us really high performance or low embodied carbon projects. We're asking them to send us really complete and comprehensive LCAs, regardless of what the project achieved. Some forms of quality assurance that we're trying to pursue to make sure that this data set is really sound is that first, participants, like I said, will send the full LCA report. So this is going to give us a lot of transparency on what went into the life cycle assessment that a lot of other benchmarking studies don't provide. We're also asking our participants to fill out a full data entry template for each project that they send us. So this will give us consistency of reporting of different project parameters, all of the different technical requirements, all the different LCA methods that they used and things like that. And lastly, we'll be asking folks to follow a user guide. And this is largely project and whole building LCA modeling requirements that the CLF is putting forth to ensure that folks are doing things in a consistent manner before it goes in, before they run their LCA results and send them to us. So we're going to collect a lot of different types of data. I won't go through all of these, but they will have a very, very rich data set with lots of information for us to find out, hopefully, both what is typical embodied carbon for new construction projects, but also what types of building types, parameters, geographies, design decisions, LCA tool background data, what are all the things that really we think might matter when determining either a high or a low embodied carbon for a building, and what advice or guidance can we give both designers or policymakers moving forward to make sense of this information. So these are just some snapshots of the types of data that we'll be collecting. And again, if you want more info, here's what that actually looks like as it's coming into our database. We'll be collecting project data, user data about who sent it, all of the embodied carbon LCA results for a small subset of projects. As part of a California-focused portion of this study, we'll be collecting operational energy use, and then a lot of qualitative feedback as well as supplemental project information to make sure that the CLF really understands what went into these projects, what went into the LCAs, how are firms producing their results, so that we can ensure quality. Oops, I think I want to skip that one. Yep. So next steps, where we're at, like I mentioned, this is really trying to kick off data collection. You can see we're going to be collecting models throughout most of the rest of the year. We're gearing up and trying to get the word out about this currently. We'll be very shortly. We just a few weeks ago or 2 weeks ago gave a whole data collection introduction call to interested parties. That's going to be uploaded to our website soon, and hopefully leading into some publication some point either late this year or throughout next 2024. Our actual next steps that we're working on now, like I said, is amplifying outreach and interest for this data collection process. We'll be sharing a lot more information, conducting surveys, and reaching out to interested parties. We're finalizing a lot of internal documents, privacy, data management plans, data collection user guides, and things like that. We're also issuing surveys both for folks that want to send us data, as well as folks that might just want to give feedback on how whole building LCA is being conducted at the industry scale. And then finally, we'll be collecting or starting to schedule data collection workshops with our actual partners. So I don't think we're doing Q&A, but that's a quick update on where we're at with the benchmarking study. So thank you. See if I can stop sharing.
One question, Brad. Is it going to be publicly available what companies are giving data to this?
No, not necessarily. There will be, in our data and transfer use agreement, there's details about whether or not teams want to be recognized as part of the project at all. And certainly their actual data, actual projects will be entirely confidential when the analysis is published.
Okay, and if we have companies that we work with that might be interested in participating, what's the best way for them to be?
Absolutely. The best step for anybody interested in this project is to fill out our participant questionnaire, which is on the project webpage.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, good questions. Thanks.
Any other quick questions before we move on?
Yeah, I'll jump in. It looks really great. And with the data being anonymized, is there a reason why you're not including cost data?
Mostly just because it's harder to get. That wasn't what we're setting out to do with this study. We are collecting a lot of information that's already going to take design teams a significant amount of effort to contribute. We've discussed whether or not we could include cost. We know that the industry wants to see that, but determined that it wasn't in the scope for this study. We hopefully will continue to do benchmarking for a long time, moving a long time into the future, where that and many other different types of information that we'd love to see could also be contributed.
Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, Victor, we've had that question a lot. We know it's important.
Yeah. So any other questions before we move on? All right, great. Then thank you so much, Brad. And next on our agenda, I'd like to, I'm delighted that Amanda Smith from Drawdown could join us this morning. And Amanda, tell us what you all are up to at Drawdown. And you might, I'll bet everybody knows what Drawdown is, but would you mind also just telling us what is Project Drawdown? It's something I've been excited about for several years since the book came out.
Yeah, let me share. I have a little presentation that just kind of shows like who we are. Sorry, let's do this. Yeah, what I find is like a lot of people either have no idea what I'm talking about or they're already huge fans of Drawdown and I don't need to talk about it. So if you're that huge fan of Drawdown, you can zone out for just like a minute. But the whole idea of Drawdown is we're just calling Drawdown the point when we quit adding emissions to the atmosphere, right? And they eventually start to decline. And so our organization's a nonprofit, a small nonprofit that's about helping the world get there. And the whole idea is that we understand the problem of climate change based on climate science and lots of other science. We provide a lot of information to people in kind of this easily digestible form and all these graphs. Most of the graphs I'm going to show you are downloadable on our site about where are emissions actually coming from. Note that these are attributed where they are emitted, right? So buildings, obviously, as a sector, have a lot more influence than the direct emissions, which electrifying would get rid of, essentially. So we help people understand what the problem is and how these things are interconnected, but we're really about showing people what climate solutions are out there that are proven and that will work. And so the idea is like, there's a lot of reasons you can make decisions based on climate, but we think that that should be done by science. And if you have heard of us, you've probably heard of Drawdown the book, which was published in 2017. That was really when the organization was coming together and it was a bunch of scientists like getting this list of solutions. We have an update to that was published in 2020 that's freely available as a PDF. And we have this online catalog, which is one of the things we're the most known for, as well as our Solutions 101, like education type video. So the solutions library, you can browse now and kind of, it's like tagged and organized and hopefully really helps people discover things that they didn't realize that can cut emissions. And so what we're up to now is really trying to get people to refocus on real zero, meaning zero for the planet. So when we say net zero, like we really mean emissions cuts and very little counting on carbon removal. And one of the things we talk about that's relevant to embodied carbon is we're trying to help people understand the time value of carbon so that if I save carbon now, that means I'm saving carbon throughout the next few decades. Right. And it makes our job a lot easier in getting to net zero as a planet, because like we're all sharing the same atmosphere, if I make those cuts now. So we really are advocating for quick cuts now in the 2020s, because that's really important to like helping us meet our planetary goals. And so the idea is like the solutions library is you can kind of browse and it's like some cool looking recipes for things you might want to make, but we're really looking at how do we scale them? So we just released the Drawdown Roadmap, which is the kind of principles for scaling them. It has a section that's relevant like for business, showing how to bring people into your climate action from throughout the business. And then we want to show people how to use science. It's information for governments and for community planners, for businesses. We do a lot of direct work with businesses as well, and for investors and philanthropists. A lot of money is not going to where the solutions are needed. And so we're trying to explain to people like how to apply solutions in time. So if you think of it in a building, right, there are certain things where if you do this first, it's going to make it easier to do everything else, or maybe unnecessary to do everything, to do some other upgrades to your building. We're looking at how our solutions apply by geography. So we're doing some geospatial work with data from IPCC and EIA and others to try to help people understand where solutions fit. So you could think of this as like heating and cooling degree days, that kind of information. We're trying to illustrate that the solutions have co-benefits, and really the co-benefits, I mean, are the things we probably should be talking about in the first place, which is that if we do certain things, right, like if we provide clean electricity, it actually has these real world benefits for people in terms of energy independence, health, income, education, right? And then this is the whole idea. We want to help people address climate change. We do a lot of information. We just built a new science team, which is 5 people, and I'm representing the built environment where we actually, can do some new science as well. And then we recognize there are a lot of barriers to the solutions that we have said are ready to go. And we want to help people address those, whether they're policy, finance. We have like a finance and a business team that works on those issues, technological barriers, or behavior and cultural barriers. And so just to say hi, I'm a mechanical engineer by training and a building energy modeler. That's where I got my education. I did a degree in grad school where I was looking at alternative energy systems and trying to quantify how much emissions they were responsible for. This was well before like an embodied viewpoint. And so I was looking at operational emissions and electricity related emissions, but I've had a long interest in that. Here's all the climate zones I've lived in. I'm actually in the right audience that you can appreciate the climate zone map. But I worked at University of Utah as a professor of mechanical engineering. I was at Pacific Northwest National Lab as an energy research engineer. I worked in practice briefly with a construction industry consulting firm. And then I joined Project Drawdown at the end of last year because it was just so compelling. So my expertise is really in like thermoeconomic analysis, doing building energy modeling, analyzing real world energy data, and understanding how buildings interact with the environment and with the electrical grid. And so I'd be happy to talk with any of you. I look forward to learning more from you. And thanks to Andrew for reaching out. And you can find all my kind of social and research work there as well too. And I'll drop the link in the chat.
Great, thank you so much, Amanda. That was fantastic. I'm really happy with the direction that your work is taking, and delighted to welcome you to this community. And I just want to repeat again, when you make a presentation, if you don't mind, just drop into the chat window any links to your presentation, to the slides, to your website of the project or initiative that you're talking about specifically. And then we'll produce something of a report on the meeting that allows everybody to know who was here and what you all were talking about. So thank you, Amanda. And now I think we've got Carolyn Butchart from the Zero Emissions Building Exchange in Vancouver. And also, I think you're connected with the CLF Vancouver hub as well, and that's a relatively new relationship. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about what is all of the kind of amazing things actually that are happening in Vancouver, British Columbia, to lead the rest of the world.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's nice to join you all here. Like Andrew said, I don't have a presentation, unfortunately. I feel like I've now come unprepared. But I work for the Zero Emissions Building Exchange here in Vancouver. We're a BC-based organization looking at decarbonisation across the whole built environment. So we have a couple of different program areas. We have the Building to Electrification Coalition that looks at building electrification. We also have the Deep Energy Retrofit program area as well. The work that I am doing is the embodied emissions scope. So recently we partnered with CLF Vancouver, which has now changed to CLF British Columbia. So ZEBEX and CLF BC joined forces, and we have a scope of work relating to embodied emissions in the built environment. Most of that work is being done under the hat of CLF BC. So this this kind of partnership has been since about August last year. Time has flown. So we've had a little bit of time to get some work under our belts, and we're really focusing on bringing people in Vancouver together because we know there's a lot of interest. We have some upcoming regulation changes in Vancouver requiring all new buildings above a certain size to submit the embodied carbon of their building, along with a baseline for their building as well. So we've got really specific guidelines on how design teams will need to calculate the embodied carbon of their building and also the requirements for their baseline. So that's kind of generated quite a lot of interest amongst designers who may not have been interested in embodied carbon 6 months ago, a year ago. So we're doing a lot of capacity building presentations. One thing that I'm really excited about is we hosted our first Embodied Carbon Awards in March, so just over a month ago now. And we had 6 winners in the first year, and we completely sold out that event. So people are definitely interested here. We had 2 large-scale project winners, 2 small-scale project winners, and 2 organizations who won in the Commitment to Change Award. We had about 40 applications to the awards, which surprised me. I thought we would really be struggling in the first year, but 40 was great. But yeah, amongst other things, we also host a research network here in BC, connecting academic institutions who are working on embodied carbon, bringing them together kind of in the same idea as this, and just letting them have a space to share their ideas. We do also have a local government peer network as well, bringing municipalities together who want to follow in the footsteps of Vancouver, but maybe don't have as much power as Vancouver, and they're looking at ways that they can implement this in their own local areas. So we're seeing change across a whole host of different spaces, and we're really there to just help people move as quickly as possible. So that's pretty much a rundown of the work that we've been doing here, and yeah, it's going quickly.
Well, thank you so much, Carolyn. I was especially really glad to hear about the Embodied Carbon Awards program that you all did. That the response to it and the way that it got recognition in the media as well was really great.
Yeah.
And inside CLF, we've been thinking, well, that was a great idea. I wonder if we might be able to work with regional hubs of the CLF in many other cities to do the same kind of thing. So that could be a model.
Yeah. Yeah.
Another person that we've got here with us today, I'm really glad to welcome Ankita Gangatra from WRI, and I think you're in a very different part of the world than I am. So could you take it forward, Ankita, and tell us what is WRI and what are you up to?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew, and thanks for accommodating me early in the schedule. I'm actually in India right now, so it's fairly late in the evening for me. And apologies for being off camera. My internet's being a bit dodgy today. Also, my camera's acting dodgy. All sorts of tech issues. But my name is Ankita Gangatra. I'm an associate in the industrial innovation team at WRI. I joined about 8 months ago, so this forum is really new to me. But before this, I was a postdoctoral fellow at Georgetown, and I was looking at cement decarbonization technologies and policies. Basically, I've got mainly 2 updates today for you all from WRI. The first one is to do with the recent EPA RFI. So WRI co-convenes the Industrial Innovation Initiative, the I3, which is along with the Great Plains Institute, and I3 convenes industry leaders, NGOs, organized labor, and other stakeholders for achieving industrial decarbonization. We have a number of cement and steel organizations as part of I3 as well. And at the end of last week, I3 submitted a response to EPA's RFI on the IRA programs to reduce greenhouse gas emissions within construction materials. We're also very supportive of the agency's effort to provide assistance for EPDs and support low carbon emissions labeling for construction materials. And we're supportive of CLF's work in this space that was led by Megan Lewis. The second update that I have for you is about international green procurement initiatives. So WRI has been carrying out a landscape assessment of the various international and domestic green procurement initiatives and policies for cement and steel. And I'm talking, for example, IDDI, the First Movers Coalition, etc. And this is all in order to link US efforts to international policies and initiatives. We've now drafted an article comparing the various international and domestic green procurement policies and initiatives on the basis of their ambition of benchmarks, technological readiness, and the targeted market share. I'll drop in a link link in the chat shortly. But the main message of the article really is that it is important to understand the differences between these initiatives to help guide conversations about harmonizing standards. Interoperability of standards is of course key, and I don't need to tell you all about how it's really important to have consistent methodologies for measurements and data reporting, and clear definitions for scopes and benchmarks that are needed to ensure that all standard speakers speak a common language, whether they're within the US or internationally. So here's a link in the chat, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Ankita. And next on the agenda, we've got Stephen Sylvan from the US EPA. And just in case nobody's actually heard of the EPA before, you might tell us something about what you all are up to. Stephen, are you there? And if you are speaking, we can't hear you. And if you're not,
Andrew, can you hear me?
yes, now we can hear you. Yes, go.
Okay, great. I was trying to connect the headset, but I don't know if that is even working. I think I'm just talking on a speakerphone here. So thank you for this chance to speak with the group. And we appreciate the, is it Ankita? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Thank you for submitting the comments to the RFI, much appreciated. A few quick updates. We completed our third of 3 stakeholder/expert engagement webinars on April 19th. We also held a stakeholder expert engagement call on salvage /reclaim materials. We're trying our best to ensure that the idea of salvage and reclaimed materials are included and considered in our work. We greatly appreciate everyone who participated in these webinars. We closed our RFI just a couple of days ago, a request for information, and we now have a plan for processing and reviewing those comments. We think it's going to be a bit of a daunting task. That's sort of the challenge that's ahead of us, but we're grateful for that everybody, so many different people took the time to draft and submit comments. We are going to look at them very, very carefully, and so thank you for everyone's contributions there. We are working hard, the team that I'm on at EPA, the environmentally preferable purchasing team that's been charged with implementing 2 sections of the IRA, 60112 and 60116. We are working hard to put the building blocks in place for the grant program that would happen under 60112. It's going to be a while before there's a lot to putting a grant program together, particularly a brand new one as large as this. We are also very, very busy on the hiring front and the staffing front. We have plans to bring 4 new people on within the next few weeks, people who are coming to us from outside of EPA. We've extended tentative offers to 3 other people, and we have much more hiring to do. So I guess those are the big items. Happy to dive a little deeper, but Allison, of course, is not able to make it today. She and Danny Macri, those 2 would probably be able to dive much deeper with any questions you may have than I could.
Great, thank you so much, Stephen. And is it Stephen or Stefan? Am I pronouncing it incorrectly?
No, you got it right. It's Stephen.
Okay.
The spelling is a little strange, but it's Stephen.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I'm kind of amazed by the amount of hiring that you all are doing. I think I saw in an email somewhere that you've got like 25 open positions for folks in the embodied carbon space. Is that right?
Yeah, we're gonna try to add about 25 new people total. As I mentioned, we already have a few new folks already on board, and a few more coming. But yes, we have authority to hire many more. And if people are interested, of people, please do contact one of us. I'm just sylvan.stephen@epa.gov, with the spelling a little different, STEPHAN. And we've planned to put out additional job postings in the coming weeks and months. And so, yeah, we are ramping up.
That is really great evidence of the centrality of embodied carbon to this whole discussion of focusing on the carbon challenge. So thanks very much for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Webley from the New Buildings Institute. I'm glad that you're on the call this morning, and please go ahead and take it away. And just remember, everybody, once you speak or as you're speaking, put links to in the chat window for the references that you're making or the presentations that you have.
I'm just going to so this is our latest fact sheet.
Webley, your voice is the audio is very poor. I wonder, maybe you can speak a little bit more directly to the mic or something. Still pretty bad.
Okay, well, come back to me.
Okay, we'll come back to Webley as she fixes the audio problems. Tracy from RMI is on the line, I think. And Tracy, do you want to go ahead and tell us what RMI is up to?
Absolutely. Let me share my screen here. My audio is coming through okay, I assume.
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. You see a mountain, now you should see some slides. So just thanks for having me here. I see Victor is also on the call, our fearless leader on the Embodied Carbon team. I'm a senior associate at RMI. We're a nonprofit focused on the clean energy transition and decarbonization of the global economy and many sectors, including transportation and in policy, and particularly our team is on the carbon-free buildings program, looking at embodied carbon as you see on the screen here. And we've have some exciting publications in the last quarter, and also some exciting project work coming up. So one of those publications is an Embodied Carbon 101 article. This lives on the website, and it's really a synthesis of where we are with the current understanding of embodied carbon on a fairly high level, with also fairly high accuracy with the number of studies and publications that are out there. And the article covers, calculation methodology, decarbonization strategies, what the policy landscape looks like, and also benefits for industry and which key stakeholders should be involved. So we're thinking this is going to be a helpful resources that's heavily referenced and can lead people who are starting to dip their feet into embodied carbon know where to go to find the latest and greatest information. And I'll publish these links in the chat, of course. Another publication is a report on the climate impact or embodied carbon impact for low-rise residential construction in North America. So this study looked at over 900 homes for the cradle to gate embodied carbon emissions to understand, where we are. Is there an average that's coming, a number that's coming out of it, and where are the hotspots for where the embodied carbon or emissions are coming from. So it's really exciting. We do see a bit of a convergence on where a potential benchmark or average benchmark could be for the low-rise residential construction sector, and also provide a lot of case studies and strategies for decarbonization, including material substitution and other and the potential impact of reductions in that way. So we think this is something that is a growing conversation in the low-rise residential construction sector, and will actually be a timely report because of what this next project is, which is the development of a national standard to measure embodied carbon in low-rise residential homes. And this will be developed through ResNet. And actually, we had a great advisory committee meeting, which voted unanimously to pursue the development of the standard, and submitted a pins to ANSI to actually have a hold accepted for the standard so that we can develop it, and also having ICC requesting to be a co-publisher in it as well. So the next step is to get the final vote from the board itself and assemble the technical working group. But this is an exciting development to bring some standardization and consistency in measuring embodied carbon in the residential sector. And following this thread of projects is a commitment program for the home builders, which will be underpinned by that ResNet standard. And the core of the commitment program is this reporting template that you see here on the screen. But the purpose really here is to support that sector, measure emissions, report consistently on them, and then a multitude of other benefits, including helping them with corporate reporting and understanding what embodied carbon is in general. And so this is in very early stages. We are just starting stakeholder meetings to try to make some key decisions on what the program looks like, what the key elements that need to be on there. And those stakeholders include many large home builders, including individuals with a lot of experience in the energy space. So more details to come, but so far it's been really great to have everybody at the table to talk about embodied carbon in a way that wasn't done before. Outside of home building, we also helped develop some educational resources, specifically looking at decarbonized concrete products for the ready-mix concrete industry. And this is more of an educational resource, which included some industry barrier analysis and stakeholder outreach, and hoping to continue pushing this along and supporting looking into some pilot projects ideas for supporting decarbonized concrete products. And in the pipeline, many things. I think I'm over my 3-minute limit here, but many publications that are coming up, including an ESG value hypothesis for low embodied carbon in the real estate sector, but also in the construction sector in general. So that's something that we're really excited to publish. That is part of our ongoing project for in a larger project of the investment guide. And I won't read out these bullet points here, but it's recorded, so I'm sure this little 5-minute or 5-second screen show will be able to be recorded somehow. And I'll leave it there. Thank you, Andrew.
Great, thank you so much, Tracy. And I'm especially interested and delighted to hear about ResNet and the Home Builders Commitment Program. It feels to me like that this is an area, this is a core part of the industry that has been somewhat left behind. So I'm really happy that you all are taking the lead on that. I'm also really happy to see Victor on the line. Victor, I think you were one of the very first participants in the NGO Roundtable back in September of 2019 here in Seattle. So it's great to see that you're still chugging along there.
I'm glad to have Tracy be able to be more articulate than I would be in this case. So thank you, Tracy.
Well, the screen behind you, you appear to be the man of the mountain. So I'm looking for the next time I see you to see a great big long beard. All right, so we've got Webley. You've got your sound fixed, I think, I hope.
It should be. Hopefully you can hear me now. Great.
Yeah.
So sharing before that we have a new fact sheet about embodied carbon encodes. Just put that in the chat. Also want to note that we will soon be publishing our embodied carbon building code language kind of in full so it can be adopted. We have some guidelines and suggestions on how to adopt it and kind of what order. So that will be coming out in June. Next week is the Getting to Zero Forum in Minneapolis. And I will put link to that in the chat in just a minute. If you are in Minnesota or interested in getting there next Tuesday, there is an MN Road tour, which is a complimentary tour. It should be pretty exciting. I can share more information about that if you just put your your just message me in the chat and I'll send you the link to that. We also have a workshop, Embodied Carbon workshop next Wednesday at the forum, and then a couple of sessions at the forum. So I'm looking forward to seeing a couple of these friendly faces I see on the call next week. We also have a really cool event that we've been doing for about 3 years called Net Zero Buildings Week. It is an online promotion and we want to encourage everybody to participate in it. This year's theme is called Decarbonization for Good. It's in the chat here. And we are going to have a day specifically dedicated to embodied carbon on June 16th. So that's a Thursday of that week. There'll be a lot of media around it, as well as webinars and a couple of other fun things. So we have had millions of impressions on social media through this campaign, and it's been a really great way to get content out and kind of infuse it in the market. So I know many of you have participated in the past, and we look forward to you participating again. A couple of codes that we've been working on. Seattle is starting a working group to discuss the concrete and steel embodied carbon proposals that we submitted at the beginning of the year. So we're looking forward to that. Since Seattle's code suite was kind of pushed back to start at the beginning of the year, we're hoping that we can get to a consensus and this can be included in the next round of codes. Also in the code front, Cal Green embodied carbon proposals are receiving a lot of heavy opposition from CalBO, which is the California building officials. So there will be hearings in August 1 through 3. So if anyone works in California, is interesting to sign up to speak and share your experience with embodied carbon, I'm happy to send you more information about that. Also on MBI's front, we are working on 2 webinars this fall and trying to collect information about who else is doing webinars and when, because we do not want to duplicate efforts. And in fact, it might be better if we team up. So we are working on the content of that, and I can share that at the next roundtable and dates. So if you are also in that category of looking to host events in the fall, let us know and we'll make sure that we can collaborate or not step on each other. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Webley. And by the way, from a purely selfish point of view, I was delighted to hear that NBI was involved in the Seattle code discussions and update. I live here in Seattle and I love the town, but I'm really happy to see that finally Seattle hopefully will be taking a real qualitative step forward around embodied carbon. Irene Dominguez from Bologna, Europa, would you please go right ahead, and there may be a few people who haven't heard about Bologna before, so tell us what you all are up to.
Perfect. So hi everyone from the other side of the pond. As Andrew mentioned, thank you for inviting me. We are Bologna Europa. We are a non-profit international independent climate NGO, basically. We started off in Oslo in the 80s, and we have been in Brussels since the 90s. We work in Brussels in EU policy, mostly, and our main areas of focus are carbon accounting, energy systems, industry, local impact, and the sustainable economy. And within the local impact scope is the embodied carbon work that we've been doing. The way we work is around research and advocacy. We're really science-based, and that's what we try to bring into our policymaking suggestions. And within our embodied carbon work, we look at the issue from 2 sides. From the demand side and trying to decarbonize construction products, assisting industry in their decarbonization schemes, trying to pull low carbon products into the market, which is the second side of the issue, basically, the supply side, creating lean markets and green public procurement as well. So we also have a history of working on zero emission construction sites. And what we are up to right now is trying to create a terms of reference report for embodied carbon in the EU, because the awareness around this topic here is lower than I can see in the US, where you are very advanced on this topic. So where I'm looking at materials such as cement and steel because they're the biggest share of the emissions, basically. We try to come up with a definition with what low carbon materials actually are, what are the markets for low carbon products in Europe, and this will evolve eventually into a report. And I also bring you some news about what's happening in the policy in the EU, basically, related to embodied carbon, of course. There are 3 open policy files at different stages of the legislative process. Most of them are already in the beginning stages, so there's a chance for them to change quite a lot so far. But the first one of them is the Net Zero Industry Act, which you may have heard about because it's part of the Green Deal Industrial Plan, which is the EU's equivalent to the Inflation Reduction Act. And it's about scaling up net zero technologies, such as carbon capture and storage, hydrogen electrolyzers, etc. And then what the embodied carbon per se is not addressed. We're trying to work through the procurement provisions to make sure that at least projects that procure low carbon materials are incentivized, or at least they have a higher share in the process. But that's still yet to be seen how that evolves. This is the earliest. It just came out a couple of weeks ago, so we're working on that. We also have the construction product regulation, which is this is the regulation that is being recasted. It's been because it hasn't been functioning properly for the past 10 years, and we want and the EU wants it to serve as a tool for decarbonization. The thing we've been seeing is that there's a big push about having embodied carbon provisions. The industry doesn't want, well, not all of the industry for sure, but the most conservative sectors don't want to have thresholds for embodied carbon, for example. So that's the situation as it is. We'll see. The vote is at the end of this month, so we'll have more news. We share them on our website and on LinkedIn. So if you follow Bellona, I will share the links to us. You will be able to follow that if you're interested. But on better news, there's also the Energy Performance for Buildings Directive, which is the most advanced of these 3 files. And it has included whole life carbon provisions after the passing by the European Parliament, which is great news. They haven't set targets for embodied carbon per se, but they will come. And we hope that this sails through quite easily, because there are other topics of the file that are going to be more, let's say, problematic for, like, the debate is focusing on other parts. So we hope that this makes it. And that's a bit it. If you have any questions, please do let me know.
Great, thank you so much, Irene. And the next folks that we've got on the agenda, the next person we've got on our agenda is Lionel Lemay from NRMCA, the National Ready Mix Concrete Association. So go right ahead, Lionel.
All right, thank you so much, and for accommodating my limited schedule. I have to take off for a flight here in just a few minutes. So obviously, a lot of our time has been spent on the IRA and GSA specs and other agencies, FHWA and DOD, and of course, recently submitting comments on the EPA low carbon program. So we've done a lot of that. We're also working with those agencies to make sure that that they modify their specifications to allow for low carbon concrete. That's of course a big initiative of ours. So educating the agencies, we do have guide specs that help eliminate some of those prescriptive requirements that would have minimum cement contents and maximum SCM contents and so forth. So that's super critical to making sure that we meet the objectives of the IRA. In terms of education as well, that's a big deal for us. One of our most popular programs that we offer all the time is the top 10 ways to reduce concrete's carbon footprint, which We typically get a lot of attendees too. And we have a series, I'm not sure, I'll put it in the chat, called Concrete Innovations, where the main focus is really on offering solutions and more innovative solutions to reducing carbon footprint. We're also involved, of course, at national codes and standards. Most recently would be ASHRAE and their attempt to identify ways to reduce embodied carbon of building materials. And then, of course, we do interface with, state legislative activities, and, the most active, I guess, recently, New Jersey passed a low carbon piece of legislation recently. Slightly different than what's in New York, but what we do like about them is they do provide incentives for companies to develop EPDs, and there's a collection period for data, and then setting carbon footprint based on that data. We're working very close with the Open Air Collaborative. They've been very good about interfacing with us and our members in those areas. But Maryland also has a new initiative or a new piece of legislation that likely will be passed, if not already, that does provide incentives the same way for EPDs. And then Minnesota is also looking at something that's quite similar to that. So that's most of what we've been. Oh, I do want to just say, and if nobody has said it yet, the CLF report recently on benchmarks was, I thought, fantastic. We'll be using that in our legislative activities. So congratulations on that. Oh, and then the final thing I want to say is that, we do establish benchmarks where the industry takes a lot of time and money to get enough data to make it relevant. And we are starting that process now. So we've, of course, get many requests for more granularity in our benchmark data, including different applications of concrete and not just based on strength class. And then also more granularity in terms of regionality, because concrete being so local, people complain that a benchmark for a region that involves several states is simply not granular enough, and even within states. So, North and Southern California or Seattle versus the rest of the state, and so forth. So we're going to try to collect more data this time so that we can try to be as granular as possible. That concludes my report. Thank you so much, Andrew.
Right. Thanks, many thanks, Lionel, and enjoy your flight as you head off to the airport there.
No, thank you. Going home.
Going home. All right. That's even better. That's even better. And now we've got Kara Kokernak from ULI. Would you please go ahead and take it away?
Okay, you're good. Great. Hi, everyone. I know we're a little bit over, so I will go quickly here. I'm Kara Kokernak with ULI. For those of us who don't know us or are not familiar, we're a membership organization. We have more than 45,000 members. We conduct research. We publish books, magazines, articles. We organize and conduct meetings like our spring meeting that we're holding in 2 weeks in Toronto. So we may see some of you there. Webley, I wanted to let you know that I will be in Minnesota next week, and we are also participating in the Net Zero Buildings Week, so we should connect some more. I work on our Center for Sustainability and focus on our decarbonization work, and we do have an embodied carbon campaign where we have quite a few things we've been working on, and we'll drop these in the chat. I think I mentioned on the last call with you all, we had an embodied carbon convening with developers in the construction industry back in January. And then we published a Urban Land Online article about that convening. So we'll drop that article in the chat. And then we also held a webinar in early April that went over some of the lessons learned from our convening and some of our next steps. So I'll also drop a link to that webinar for you all to watch or read about. We've got a sustainable materials report, creating value with low carbon and healthy building materials, that is going to be published in the next few weeks, and will also be a session at that ULI spring meeting on Tuesday, May 16th. If you'll be up in Toronto, please join us. We have another convening that we're scheduling and facilitating in late summer. So we'll have our developers there, we'll have the construction industry there, and we'll also have folks from the supplier industry there. So I saw some people on this call that will be getting an invite and some information about that convening. That will be in late summer. And then lastly, our annual State of Green version 14 will this year for the first time be collecting embodied carbon data from our Greenprint community of practice. So we will keep you updated on those pilot efforts, but we're excited to see what comes out of our data collection ask and how many folks are collecting and analyzing their embodied carbon data.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Cara. And I'd also like to note that also on the call this morning, we've got Marta Shantz, who has a double identity, I think, actually both from the Urban Land Institute's Greenprint Center for Building Performance and a member of the CLF board advisory board. So thank you for being here also, Marta. And do you want to say anything before we move on?
Nothing to contribute. All good. Thanks, everyone.
Right. Okay, great. And now Peter Bacchus from the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey. You've got some especially interesting and exciting news to relate, I think. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon or good morning for everyone else not out on the East Coast. I'm assuming most people know the scope of the Port Authority, but for those of you who don't, the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey is responsible for 5 New York City area airports, the Port of New York, New Jersey, World Trade Center, a subway, a bunch of bridges and tunnels, and the Midtown bus terminal. So we have a pretty wide, all-encompassing built environment. And over the past few years, we've been working very closely on quantifying our embodied carbon, as well as working on updating our various material technical specifications to account for low embodied carbon material sourcing. To that end, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we've finally updated our Portland cement concrete specification to include A1 GWP limits. Those, for simplicity's sake, I'm just going to quote one number. I believe it's 267 kilograms per cubic meter for A1. And that's going to be for all concrete with a design compressive strength from 3,000 PSI to 5,499 PSI. We also have broken down for whether it's being used for tested against flexural strength, whether it's using lightweight aggregates, as well as other design compressive strength categories. As part of that update, we also put in a requirement of EPD submissions alongside ready-mix designs being submitted for approval effective January 1st, 2025. If no EPD is submitted, then the mix will not be approved for use. This builds off of our existing Division 1 specification that requires EPDs be submitted or negative proof, showing that no EPD exists. Aside from that, we also provided a response to the EPA's RFI. So that was pretty awesome to provide some input on. It was a pretty well thought out RFI, so I'm happy we were able to provide some comments. We've also been working on just doing a recap of our 2022 embodied carbon, just overview for all of our construction division. Have some pretty cool data. So we were able to tie about 88% of all of our steel products to a product-specific EPD, 100% of rebar to a product-specific EPD, 92% of asphalt tied to a product-specific EPD, and about 75% of ready-mix asphalt tied to a product-specific EPD. All in all, we received about 170 product-specific EPDs collected since our start back in 2020, with the vast majority coming in the past year. We've also begun to quantify our A4 impacts, and from a good sense, our initial work has showed that A4 is relatively small compared to our A1 to A3 across all material streams, which is, it's good to see. We do still have a data gap we're working on how to quantify A4 for foreign sourced or non-truck products, namely steel that's coming from Europe, which isn't a lot, but we still did source for it, so we're trying to account for it. We've also been working on addressing compliance regarding the collection of consistent fuel tickets on a monthly basis for all of our projects, construction demolition waste reporting to ensure our 90% landfill diversion rate, as well as additional EPDs. Lastly, and I'm sorry if I'm going quickly, I know we're probably coming up on time, but lastly, we've been also hard at work creating We're fine? Okay. Well, in any case, the last thing that I have is we've been creating dashboards to clearly demonstrate impacts of leadership. I know the discussions in these groups have already been centered on global warming potential, but since EPDs include many other KPIs, we're also trying to build out, just starting to track eutrophication, acidification, ozone depletion, waste generation from these materials, not necessarily seeing if we're going to try to set a limit, just, collect the data, and then maybe in down the road, we can do something with it. So that is a quick rapid fire update from the Port Authority.
Great, Peter. I'm just kind of amazed at the explosion of product-specific EPDs that you related. And this is, once in a while, it's okay to just stop and think about, well, what was the world like 2 years ago even, or 3 years ago, and how rapidly attention and action is focused on, has turned to focus on embodied carbon, and it's just kind of astounding. The work that's the report that's showing a progress that's showing up in your report especially is just remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, when we started 2 years ago, I was thinking I was able to find 5 product-specific EPDs across all materials, and then within the past year, working closely with our producers and their trade groups, we were able to probably collect at least 120 different ones from all of our different concrete suppliers, our asphalt plants. All of our regional asphalt suppliers are now generating EPDs. The vast majority of our concrete suppliers are already beginning to generate EPDs ahead of that 2025 deadline in the spec. So it's wild, rapid growth, but it's good.
Amazing. And with the help of the IRA, of course, we're hoping that those numbers could, increase by a factor of 10 or more. So that's just great to hear. And Lauren Kubiak is on the line from NRDC, and I wonder, would you like to go ahead and give? I know that I didn't ask you in advance to do this, but would you mind giving us a little report on what NRDC is up to?
Yeah, happy to. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Lauren Kubiak. I'm a senior scientist in our San Francisco office working on power sector and industrial decarbonization. And our embodied carbon work is mostly focused at the material level. So we have folks working on cement and concrete, steel and aluminum decarbonization. And a lot of our attention has been on public procurement policy. So we're working in New York, New Jersey, and at the federal level on public procurement. And we are kind of scoping how to kind of address embodied carbon from a kind of a more comprehensive level with our building team. We have a pretty large and established building team that works at the city, state, and federal level on building decarbonization, but mostly on, but not really focused on embodied carbon emissions, mostly focused on process emissions. So we recently did kind of a roadmap to kind of take a step back and look at the broader scope of embodied carbon reductions. And Arup did a pretty robust synthesis that I'd be interested in sharing with this group that kind of pointed to the big impacts of a whole building approach. So we're kind of assessing how to implement those findings and scale up our embodied carbon work in California and beyond.
Great, thank you, Lauren. And please go ahead and put a link to the report that you referenced in the chat window, if you don't mind. We'd love to share that with everybody.
Yeah, it's not published yet, but I'll be happy to share once it is.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then and Katie Riddle is on the line also from the American Society of Landscape Architects. I met Katie in January, was it, here in Seattle, when a bunch of organizations got together to think about a common strategy for reporting data related to embodied carbon reduction in a way that was consistent across categories, across certification programs, across reporting commitments in the industry. So I'm really delighted to see you on the call this morning, Katie. And would you mind just telling us a little bit more about ASLA? And it seems to me that really remarkable and insightful connection of landscape design and construction to embodied carbon.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for the invitation, Andrew. I'm Katie Brittle, Director of Professional Practice with the American Society of Landscape Architects. We are a membership association representing the landscape architecture profession. We have about 15,000 members, so comparatively small to other built environment disciplines, but we're thrilled to be a part of these conversations. We're sort of dipping our toes into this world and working with our National Climate Action Committee to educate our members and our industry partners on environmental product declarations and what is coming for the profession. As Andrew mentioned, we have joined this informal coalition around embodied carbon in the built environment, and we're happy to have a seat at the table to advocate for whole project life cycle assessments and making sure that the project site and infrastructure are a part of the conversation and calculations and solutions for drawing down carbon.
Great, thanks so much, Katie. And finally, we've got Fiona Greer on the line. Fiona from the Center for the Built Environment at UC Berkeley. And I don't think you've been part of these calls before, so I'm really delighted to see you. And the CBE in a number of ways is a partner and paired organization with the CLF. So would you please tell us a little bit more about your organization and your work and the educational resources that you have available and training sessions that you have available as well?
Sure. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I'm Fiona Greer, a postdoc researcher with a joint appointment here at UC Berkeley in our Department of Civil Engineering with Arpad Horvath, and then with the Center for the Built Environment. And CBE and our department is currently working with CLF on a benchmarking project for assessing total carbon in buildings in California. We're also in the midst of developing research proposals around embodied carbon and whole life cycle assessment. And we just actually submitted a large proposal as part of the California Climate Initiative, which we'll hopefully hear positively about in the coming months. And CBE is just completed its industry advisory board meeting where embodied carbon was a pretty big feature of the research, where as in the past, CBE has mainly been focusing on operational aspects of building. So very excited to be part of this new work with CLF.